Luke had lived his whole life in the quiet Wyoming town, a place where everyone knew the shape of the mountains, the color of the sky, and the rhythm of the ranching seasons. He was the kind of man who spoke little but noticed everything, and he carried a steady calm wherever he went. People trusted him because he never made a big show of helping others. He simply stepped in whenever someone needed a hand. Emily arrived in town 11 months earlier, appearing out of nowhere like a bird blown off course. She took a job at the roadside cafe on the edge of town, working long hours, keeping her head down, and avoiding long conversations. She always wore the same soft smile, the kind that tried to hide more than it revealed. Most customers accepted it without question, but Luke noticed something deeper. There was a constant worry in her eyes, like she was ready to run at any moment. He didn't know her story, but he sensed the heaviness she carried. Even without speaking to her much, Luke found himself looking out for her in small ways. If she dropped something, he bent down first. If she looked hurried, he held the door open so she could pass without bumping into anyone. If she stepped outside during break time, he nodded politely from his truck, giving her space but letting her know she wasn't invisible. Emily never said more than a soft thank you, but he saw the relief in her shoulders each time someone treated her gently instead of sharply. One rainy evening, their paths crossed in a way neither expected. Emily was riding her old bicycle home after the cafe closed early because of a storm. The sky was dark, the rain steady, and the road nearly empty. When she tried to speed up to escape the cold, the chain snapped with a loud metallic pop. She panicked for a moment, trapped on the quiet road with no shelter and no way to ride home before the storm worsened. She tried to fix the chain, her fingers trembling from the cold and her breath shaking with frustration. Rainwater dripped from her hair into her eyes, making it hard to see. She kept glancing up and down the empty road, afraid of being alone out there. Her mind raced with old fears she never talked about, memories she had tried to escape when she moved to this town. Headlights finally appeared in the distance. The pickup slowed and stopped behind her. When the door opened, she recognized the tall figure stepping out, Luke. He didn't shout over the rain or ask questions. He simply crouched beside the bicycle and gently took the chain from her shaking hands. "Let me help," he said softly. Emily stood there shivering, watching him fix the chain quickly and calmly, as if the storm didn't bother him at all. She tried to thank him, but the cold and fear tangled her words. Luke didn't comment on her voice or the worry in her eyes. When he finished, he tested the pedals, nodded, and said. She whispered a small thank you. He tipped his hat, walked back to his truck, and drove away. Emily watched the taillights disappear through the rain. Feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, someone had helped her without wanting anything. In the following days, Emily thought about the moment more than she expected. Luke wasn't loud or dramatic. He simply arrived, fixed the problem, and left. That quiet kindness stayed with her. A week later, the cafe stayed open later than usual. Emily cleaned up after the last customers and stepped outside into the cool night. The streetlights flickered against the old buildings, and the air was calm. She started walking home, enjoying the peaceful silence, until she heard footsteps behind her. At first, she told herself it was just someone else heading home, but the slow, steady rhythm made her tense. She quickened her steps. The footsteps quickened too. Her heart pounded. A familiar fear filled her chest. She turned a corner, hoping to lose whoever was behind her. But the footsteps followed. She darted behind the old grain silo. Breathing hard, when she turned, she froze. It was her stepfather, the man she had tried to get away from when she ran months ago. She hadn't seen him since. She had hoped he would never find her. But now he stood in front of her, blocking her only escape path. "There you are," he said, voice low. "You thought you could just leave?" Emily felt the world spin. Her hands shook, and her breath came in short bursts. She didn't know what to say. Her mind filled with panic. She whispered, "Go away, please." But he stepped closer. Angry that she defied him, she tried slipping past him, but he grabbed her wrist tightly. At that same moment, miles away on the Turner Ranch, Luke was finishing a long night tending to a sick calf. He normally drove straight home, but something nudged him to take the old road past the grain silo. He didn't know why, maybe just habit, maybe the quiet night. But he turned his truck toward town. As he approached the cafe area, he heard something faint through the wind, a muffled cry. He slowed the truck, listening again. Another soft sound reached him, shaky and desperate. He pulled over near the silo, stepped out quietly, and followed the noise. He found Emily pressed against the metal wall, her stepfather gripping her wrist while she trembled. For a split second, Luke's expression changed, not anger, but determination. He stepped between them with a calm firmness that froze both of them in place. "That's enough," Luke said quietly. Emily's stepfather tried to push forward, but Luke didn't move. He didn't raise his fists or shout. He simply stood there, steady as a wall. The man hesitated, recognizing that Luke wasn't someone who ran from trouble. Emily hid behind Luke, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. She didn't understand how Luke had found her, how he appeared right when she needed help. All she knew was that she felt safer standing behind him than she had felt in years. The confrontation grew tense. Emily's stepfather tried threatening Luke, trying to act fearless, but Luke never backed down. He kept his voice even, and told the man to leave town before things got worse for him. Just then, one of the ranch workers arrived after hearing the noise from the nearby barn. The extra presence made Emily's stepfather step back, mutter something under his breath, and leave in frustration. When he disappeared into the night, Emily finally leaned against the silo, breathing fast and shaking uncontrollably. She tried to speak but couldn't form any words. Luke turned toward her, stepping slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." Emily looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. No one had ever stepped in that firmly for her. No one had ever returned at the right moment. Not in her old life. She felt overwhelmed, confused, grateful, and scared, all at once. Luke gently kept his distance, giving her space to breathe. When she calmed enough to stand on her own, she whispered the question that had been sitting heavy on her heart. "Why? Why did you return? For me?" Her voice was trembling, almost breaking. She didn't expect an answer she could believe. She didn't expect anyone to ever choose to come back for her. Luke looked at her with steady, honest eyes. He didn't hurry to answer. He didn't make it dramatic. He just spoke the truth. "Because you needed someone," he said quietly. Emily froze, her breath catching in her chest. The storm of fear inside her slowly softened. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone in the world. And that simple sentence, those 4 words, would stay with her forever. The morning after the incident near the grain silo felt strange for Emily. She woke up before sunrise, sat on the edge of her small rented room, and stared at the quiet street outside. Normally, mornings filled her with nervous thoughts. What if someone from her old life showed up? What if the day went wrong? What if she wasn't strong enough? But that morning, she kept replaying Luke's calm voice in her mind. "Because you needed someone." It was such a simple answer, yet it had shaken her more than anything else. She arrived early at the cafe, hoping to distract herself with work. She wiped the counters twice, even though they were already clean. She arranged the tables and restacked all the sugar packets. She tried to look normal, but the cook, a kind older woman named Martha, noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. Emily was usually quiet, but that day, her silence had a deeper weight. Martha asked softly if she was okay. Emily almost answered honestly, but she stopped herself, not ready to reveal the truth. She just nodded and said she was tired. A few hours later, the sheriff stopped by the cafe. Emily stiffened when she saw him walk in. He greeted Martha first, then came to her gently. He told her they had looked into the situation from last night. The man who confronted her had left town early that morning. He gave Emily his word that the town would keep an eye out, and if anything ever felt unsafe, all she had to do was call. Emily thanked him, her voice small but steady. She felt relieved, but a part of her still felt fragile, as if the fear had left footprints inside her. Later that afternoon, Luke walked in quietly. He didn't come in as a hero, didn't expect praise, didn't even mention what happened the night before. He just ordered coffee as usual. Emily stood behind the counter, suddenly nervous for reasons she didn't understand. When she brought the cup to his table, he noticed her hands shaking slightly. "You don't have to talk about anything," he said gently. "I just wanted to check if you're doing all right today." Emily nodded, but something inside her felt warm. No one had ever checked on her without expecting something in return. She sat across from him for a moment, her apron still on, her voice quiet but clear enough. She thanked him again for helping her, though she knew the words couldn't express everything she felt. Luke simply nodded, as if he didn't need a long explanation. Over the next few days, Emily found herself thinking more clearly. Her old fear didn't vanish overnight, but it didn't control her the same way either. She started walking home with more confidence. She slept deeper than she had in months. At work, customers noticed she smiled a little more, and her voice didn't tremble as often. Even Martha whispered to her one morning, "Something's changed in you, dear." In a good way. My cleating the fina. Emily knew exactly why. One evening, after finishing her shift, she decided to stop by the Turner Ranch. She wasn't sure what she planned to say. She only knew she wanted to thank Luke properly, not with rushed words or trembling speech, but with the truth. She walked up the gravel road leading to the ranch house. The wide field stretched out under the warm evening light. Horses grazed peacefully, and the soft smell of hay filled the air. Luke was fixing a broken fence near the pasture when he saw her walking toward him. He set down his tools and wiped dust from his hands. Emily's steps slowed as she reached him, her heart beating fast. She didn't know why she was nervous. It wasn't fear, but something softer, something she wasn't used to. "You're working late," she said quietly. "Fence needed patching," Luke replied with a small smile. "What brings you all the way out here?" Emily took a breath. For a moment, she hesitated, then slowly began telling him the truth about her past. She didn't give every detail, only what she felt safe sharing. How her home life had been hard, how she had never felt like she belonged there, how she had run to this town to find peace. Luke listened without interrupting once. His calm expression didn't change. He didn't rush her, didn't push her, didn't look shocked. He simply listened. When she paused, he said softly, "You've been strong for a long time." The words surprised her. She had never thought of herself as strong. She thought of herself as someone who escaped, someone who hid, someone who barely survived. But Luke said it with such quiet certainty that she almost believed him. In the days that followed, Emily began visiting the ranch more often. Sometimes, she helped feed the chickens or check on the horses. Other times, she just sat on the fence, watching Luke work in his steady way. He wasn't talkative, but he wasn't distant either. He spoke when he needed to, and listened when she did. Emily found comfort in the simple presence of someone who didn't demand anything from her. The town began to notice the change. People who had seen Emily rush through life before now saw her taking her time, smiling, asking questions, even laughing lightly. She had started attending small community events, like the weekly farmers market or the Sunday gatherings near the lake. Luke was often nearby, but he never hovered over her. He stood close enough to show support, far enough to let her feel independent. One evening, Emily helped Luke bring water buckets to the horses. The sunset colored the sky orange and gold, and the soft breeze carried the sound of crickets through the fields. Emily felt peaceful, something she had rarely known. As she watched the horses drink, she realized she had found the courage to ask the question that had lived in her heart since the night he saved her. She walked with him toward the fence line, her fingers nervously brushing the wooden rails. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Luke, that night, when you came back, why did you tell me that?" Luke paused, resting his forearms on the top rail of the fence. He looked out at the fields for a moment before answering. Emily could see him choosing his words with care, not because he was uncertain, but because he wanted to speak honestly. "Because it was true," he said quietly. "You were alone. And sometimes, all a person needs is someone to stand beside them. He glanced at her gently. You deserved that. Emily felt her throat tighten. No one had ever told her she deserved kindness. No one had ever stepped into danger for her with no expectation, no reward, no reason except care. The weight of all those lonely years suddenly felt lighter. She blinked back tears not of sadness, but of relief. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of rebuilding her life. She wasn't afraid of trusting again. Luke wasn't trying to rescue her from every problem. He wasn't trying to fix her. He simply believed she was worth showing up for. She quietly thanked him again, but Luke shook his head softly. You don't owe me thanks. You just keep living your life. That's more than enough. Over the next months, Emily's confidence grew even stronger. She started taking evening rides with Luke, exploring small trails around the ranch. The townspeople often saw them together, walking side by side, talking quietly about simple things: work, weather, new calves, plans for the next farmer's market. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Emily found herself smiling more freely. Luke found himself watching her smile with quiet pride. Their connection didn't flare like a fast spark. It warmed slowly like a steady fire, growing brighter with each shared moment. Emily later looked back on her life and realized that the night at the grain silo wasn't just a moment of fear, it was the turning point of her entire path. A moment when someone returned for her without hesitation, without expecting anything, simply because she needed someone. And that simple act changed everything. It allowed her to rebuild, to trust, to grow, and to finally feel safe in a world that had once felt too heavy to survive. Sometimes, she reflected, strength isn't found in fighting battles alone. Sometimes strength begins when one person steps back into your life at the exact moment you need them, stands beside you, and reminds you gently that you matter.